welcome to UQRUG. This is a gathering where we all share skills in R, help each other solve problems. If you've got some cool new tip that you want to share with people, you can bring it along. And also I guess, you can be a variety of different types of user. You might be here with a question, you might be here to answer questions, and you can also just be here to watch. You don't have to ask questions or answer questions. You can just merely hang around to see what kind of interesting things come up. And I guess if you really want to, you can just listen while we talk about stuff in case something interesting pops up for you. Lots of different uses. So this is our website, uqrug.netlify.app. I'll put that in the chat in case anyone wants to get through to that. I've got a laptop in front of me and I just tried to use the laptop in front of me. That was great. This is a Netlify website. So we made this site using Quarto, which is a R package. So we did cover a bit of Quarto last week about how to make websites using R and Quarto. And this one has been made that way. You've probably seen this one before if you're not new to RUG. But something that is new, I've now put the past meeting notes as a tab on the website so that you can actually go through and look at all of the different questions that have come up in previous meetings. I'm still cleaning bits of it up, but because there's so many of them, there is a little bit of mess in there, but it means that you go to the search tab up here. And if you had a question related to, say, spatial analysis, you can have a look at the different things that we've got on here where people have asked questions about spatial things. So hopefully it's a resource that you can dig into to find things. But yeah, that's the latest thing. And then the third thing we'll do is do the intro to an R package. This month, it's not actually an intro to an R package specifically. Luke will be going over his exploration of using generative AI to help him debug code, to fix code, to make code, do all sorts of stuff. It's not necessarily a how-to, but things that Luke has come across in his exploration of that space. So everything from ChatGPT to the Bing AI.
Word and designer tool to create this PowerPoint. So the design is a little bit out of whack. I definitely didn't use the UQ template because I was just having some fun while playing with AI and R. So I apologize now that the appearance of some of these slides are going to be disorientating. But mostly it's the content that we want to talk about. So I just want to talk about sort of some of the stuff that I've been using ChatGPT for. I have actually recently moved away from using ChatGPT and I've been using Edge and Bing because I've found it more useful, but I'll come back to that at the end. I just sort of want to talk through an introduction, some common uses that I've found so far for it. My experience of actually doing an end-to-end project. So what I mean by that is essentially trying to get the AI to do all the work in that I don't have to do any work. How good is it at actually doing a whole project with me just telling it what to do? And then sort of some summary and some lessons that I've learned from doing that. And then some tips and advice for yourselves. So as anyone who's been on the internet the last 3 months may know, AI is everywhere, especially around YouTube. I'm a big YouTube consumer. My YouTube feed is basically just full of people telling me how great ChatGPT is at doing their job and they can, make games and whatever else, etc. So that's sort of the context of where I've been playing with it, sort of been going, oh, really? It's 10 times your productivity as a developer. I'm interested in how it's done that. So I've been sort of consuming a lot of videos when I can around that. In my role, I don't get a lot of time with R and Python and whatever else, so I don't get to sort of deep dive as much as I want. So that's where I've mostly been using the AI, is to try and give me back time. But some quick examples that I have used it for is I've used it for, I do things called Power Automates, which is to do with the Microsoft 365 suite. It's the automation tool that's not code-based, but you can use JSON code behind it. So I've used it for things, just simple things like help me change date formats in a language. So it can help me sort of create functions where it says, I've put in the actual code that it's using, format, date, time, 2009, June 15, and then this T 134530 and a G, which I didn't fully understand what it was doing, but all I really wanted was I need to turn this into an Australian time zone, and I know that it's using UTC time zone. And so it gave me a breakdown of what the code is trying to do, the actual sort of structure of the function, and then actually spat out the ability that adding hours and specifying 10 gave me what I needed. And so it was just a lot easier than me going through Stack Overflow, trying to find an answer, because there's many different answers on Stack Overflow depending on how you Google. By asking this question to ChatGPT, it actually gave me code that I could very quickly copy out and put into the tool I was using, and it worked. Sometimes it doesn't work, but for this one, it was definitely one where it was just a simple ask, and that was it. I very specifically asked it about one function and what I needed, and it was able to help me. Another example is I have what has now evolved into a bit of a behemoth Shiny app that we use for our team for tracking stats, etc. And when I had a lot of time a couple of years ago, I really built out that Shiny app, but it's now gotten to a point where if I don't have time, I can't go back and make small adjustments because it has become hundreds and hundreds of lines of code. And so this is an example where I was sort of playing with R code around my Shiny app, and I wanted to just make some visual adjustments. So for instance, I asked it how I could add right padding or spacing between sort of two elements, the title element and the navbar title, which is the actual code, navbar page title. And I didn't give it any code. I basically just asked it that question. And I was able to sort of get this code out here, which I didn't copy and paste into my code because my navbar page function has quite a lot more in it than what this is simply using. But I was able to actually sort of look at what it was trying to do to add that padding and then incorporate that into my own code. And so again, using it sort of as a bit of a Stack Overflow replacement or trying to save me time from going through lots of Google results. It didn't quite answer me with this one. So I actually asked a clarifying question of how do I add space between two divs within a Shiny app? So divs is a bit of a HTML code, but Shiny does base itself off of HTML. And again, it was able to sort of just get me started with exploring my code and being able to adjust my code, which is where I think it's really, really useful for someone who's learning R, that if you're sort of trying to learn R or learn Python, etc., you can pose a question or a problem to it and then just review the code and try and understand the code and what the code it's giving you is doing, which is what I was doing here, where I was actually looking into the div and seeing things around the display and the flex to determine if I could add that to my own code. And what I really like is that it sort of attempts to actually explain what it's doing or what it's giving you, which can also go a long way of trying to understand a new language or a new process in a language that you already know. Another one was actually in Excel. I gave it a complex problem that someone else asked me. And I get a lot of Excel questions because Excel is the background that I come from. When it comes to R, I learned Excel, then moved into R. And which version? I'm just using the non-paid version, which I believe is based on 3.5, but 3 is the quick way to say it. I have the non-paid version of ChatGPT, so I'm not using GPT-4 in any way. But I got asked, I have all this Excel data that I've exported from Outlook. How do I clean that export up so that it is only counting unique conversations? If you've ever used Outlook or any email app, you may notice that sometimes a reply or a forward get grouped together or they get split apart. And so this person was only interested in if there was a reply, it doesn't matter how many replies they were, that was one conversation. How many conversations were in my inbox? And so I asked it, I've copied email data out of Outlook. I've pasted this into an Excel spreadsheet. What I'm hoping to do is get a number of emails actioned. Outlook will create the return, reply and forward tag on subjects when they are applied to or forwarded. How can I create a unique list of subject lines? And it sort of attempted to go through a process of how to do that using just the menus, but it also gave me sort of a formula in Excel that might help me then do a count of those unique items. It wasn't quite enough for me because I then wanted to say, well, can you remove the forward and the reply tag at the start of every single one? And if it is present, if it isn't present, don't do anything. So I almost posed the question as an if statement to the actual GPT, where it was like, here's my problem, I want to remove this. If it is present, if it isn't, do this. It then gave me a really sort of long combination or nested function, that was the term I was trying to look for. I was looking at Valentina, who's done more Excel classes than me recently. A nested function that was allowed me to sort of trim email subjects based on forward, reply, or nothing. And so even just giving it sort of non-code prompts, but going about it in a programmer way, sort of helps just get started on certain projects. Another one that I've used it for is regular expression. I hate regular expression, but every now and again I come up against problems trying to use regular expression. I've never understood regular expression. Nick understands it a little bit more than me, so I often bug him with questions about it. But I have a data set that sort of combines a number of fields in a text field. And I want to sort of just clean that up into individual columns in a CSV was the problem, where it basically gives full name, a student number, an email address, a requirement, and additional information as one cell block or within a column, which is not useful to me. And I wanted to split that up into 5 separate columns. So it's given me essentially a script that I can start off in R and start to sort of shape to my own project. So it just gives me sort of a your file.csv that I would have to sort of remove. It does use the base R as much as possible, unless you actually specify, and I'm going to get into that with my bigger project that I'm going to talk about in a second. But it will sort of use base R and not import too many modules if you don't ask it to. But it's sort of read CSV, split the data based on string split. Do calls, R binds, etc. So it just sort of, and it even spells out and comments the code lines, which is really nice if you're sort of getting used to or learning a language. In this instance, it didn't actually help me, but it was enough to get me started with being able to split it out, because I then had to sort of specify using regular expression, which I haven't put a screenshot in, because that actually tidied it up and made it a bit nicer. But it's all just about that getting started point for me, is how I've been using it. In a end-to-end project, I actually asked ChatGPT to do a summary of our project, which even that it got wrong. So that's something to be mindful of, is that sometimes it's way off the base. But I went into ChatGPT. Sorry, there's a lot of text on that I'm not reading. I've just put that up there while I talk. But I gave it a problem. I wanted to create a Shiny app. I wanted to create a Shiny app where people could upload CSV files, and the CSV file has a date time variable. But I wanted to split that into a date column and a time column. Now, this is actually something that I do in my role quite a lot with a certain system. We export data out of that system. It always comes out as a date time column combined. But for a lot of the sort of analysis and reporting, we want to sort of break it up into dates and then hours. So in order to do things like pivot tables and just nicer visualizations, I really need a separate date column and a separate time column. Now, I've been doing this in R for years. I always just download the CSV. I basically have a blanket script and I just run that script over the files. But I have colleagues who don't have necessarily the capabilities to do that. And so I was trying to see if I could create a tool where they could just upload the file and it would get the same result without having to do the code part.